when it comes to, you're mentioning like we should be speaking at universities, Joe, the first thing they ever say is like, oh, Jimmy, he was a fraud investigator. He's from the corporate world. Like Ben has an awesome story too, by the way, coming out of the corporate world. You got
we could get into that.
Yeah,
so
you got
going.
patents with all right, tech guy. We'll get into that. But like, so that's they immediately dismiss. And I want to make an interesting point, which is that
it's so crazy that they're gatekeepers.
Yeah,
the egocentric, ego-minded gatekeepers. Like they don't want anyone to discover something they haven't noticed.
100%. It is totally what they do. It's almost unbelievable. Coming as like an outsider to this, I couldn't be more surprised to see the reactions to anything alternative, because it's like, wait a second. The success of the things that we present, the success of Graham Hancock's Ancient Apocalypse show, any true enthusiast of ancient history or geology, this is a win-win for everybody, because it's gaining interest in these unanswered questions, and everybody would stand to gain from it. Like archaeologists, like if it was up to me, they'd be out there digging right now because of this stuff.
But the problem is they have already made these assertions. They've already published papers. They've already written books. And those books would now be disproven, and they would look foolish, and they do not want to look foolish. They're throwing everything at Ancient Apocalypse.
They really are.
Every word in the book. I don't even want to utter it.
Racism.
Yeah.
White supremacists.
And white supremacy.
How is it white supremacy to say that people who lived 12,000 years ago, we have zero idea what color they were. We have zero idea what they looked like. We're literally talking about human beings, fellow human beings, that created some unbelievably magnificent structures that exist today.
Yeah.
To call that, or to somehow or another connect that to racism, like how?
It's ad hominem. The only reason why you would do this, it's one of two things. I've listened to their arguments, and it's either one of two. I'm just going to say it. I'll be bold. They're either really stupid to associate that with racism, or they're doing exactly what I see going for anyone that says something counter to a narrative, which is we need to cancel this person, shut them up.
Yes.
And I had a friend reach out to me when this show came out, and they Googled, I don't even want to say this, but it has to be said. They Googled Graham Hancock, and there's articles at the top linking him to white supremacy. I'm like, this is, in my mind, that's why they do it, because they want to just shout some doubt on you.
Well, it's trying to generate outrage without addressing the things that he says, and addressing his specific arguments.
He's married to an Indian woman.
Everything
about it is fucking dumb.
And he's one of the.
He's the nicest guy in the world.
I know Graham pretty well too. He is. He's one of the most considerate people you ever meet.
He's so nice, and he's just so inquisitive, and he's been so courageous his entire career. And the more time goes on, the more he's validated.
It's
the
true.
More
really?
Yes. I mean, you go back to Fingerprints of the Gods. I read about that in the 90s. I read that book in the 90s, and that's when I got really into his stuff. And back then, if you brought it up, people would go, oh, he's a kook. This is not. But as the internet came about, and as more and more information became available, and then the discovery of Göbekli Tepe just threw the whole thing on its head.
Yeah. He has. I would argue he's done more. Sorry, Ben. Real quick. He's done more for the bringing the topic of the mysteries of lost ancient civilizations, cataclysms, than arguably anyone else on Earth. Because of him, I saw him on your show. I go down the rabbit hole, start looking. I start talking about these things. So it's like everyone should be saying thank you to Graham Hancock. Sorry, Ben.
They're just so scared that he's going to make them look like fools because they wrote these books when they had limited access to information, and they made these very like direct assertions. This is what happened. And they're wrong.
It's a position of power. It's archaeology not being a hard science that does hypothesis, experiment, and result like you can do in things like chemistry, for example. These guys they rise to their positions of powers in academia. They become their whole personal, I think, sense of self is somehow tied up around this position as an expert in this story. And that's all it is. Ultimately, we're trying to interpret the very scant evidence that is history. We're looking through the bones of many civilizations. People have destroyed things, rebuilt them, destroyed them, rebuilt them. You're trying to put that together and evaluate this evidence. And they write the textbooks, and they kind of have that position of power. And when new evidence comes along that I think threatens that's why you get, in some ways, such a strong reaction, because you're almost threatening the person. I think they take it that way, and it's
most certainly,
it's unfortunate.
I'm sure you've seen the original discussion that Graham had with Dr. Robert Schock when they brought the evidence of the water erosion to the Sphinx.
Mm-hmm.
And then that archaeologist like laughing, but like not really laughing. It was, oh, what evidence do we have
Mark
of
Lehner.
an ancient civilization 11,000 years ago? Well, now we have a lot, fuckface.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a lot, you know.
Yeah.
There's Göbekli Tepe is massive, and then there's another structure that's close to Göbekli Tepe.
Karahan Tepe.
Yeah.
In fact, they're discovering many of them now.